Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com. Purple Daily, presented by Surly Brewing Company.
Yeah, welcome in to Daily Vikings Entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die. Phil Mackey, Judd Zulgad, our executive producer, Declan Goff. And these Vikings shenanigans are presented by our friends at TCL. No matter what you watch, TCL has award-winning TVs for any budget, any space, all with stunning picture quality. And TCL makes more than just TVs. They offer mobile products, audio devices, home appliances. TCL bringing you joy and simplicity through innovative technology. Learn more at TCL.com. All right, welcome in. We're just talking about this off microphone. Technically, this is the last week of training camp, but it sounds like we're going to kind of go from preseason game number 1 pretty much into the 2-day joint practice with the 49ers and then into preseason game number 2. So in terms of practicing amongst themselves in front of media and fans, this is kind of it. Kind of went through that snuck up fast. 2.5 weeks of training camp, and now you get actual opponents to go up against. So we're going to empty the rest of Judd's notebook here from the first preseason game and things that we've learned so far, and then get to some things that people are saying about the Vikings. But I feel like we left some right guard discussion, little meat on the bone. I don't know. We did so much on Kellen Mond on yesterday's episode. I don't know that we did enough justice to what's happening at right guard. And so, Judd, let's go back into your notebook here.
So I think it was a week and a half ago. I told you that Jesse Davis, a veteran tackle / guard, who I believe was with the Dolphins last year and got hurt, he got a day off to rest his knee. And it was at that point that Ed Ingram, the second-round pick by the Vikings in April, moved up with the first team. So, okay, that's fine. That's it's interesting, but it didn't say a lot. Well, then a couple days after that, with Jesse Davis back practicing, Ingram and Davis split reps with the ones. Now that's intriguing because now that's a competition. Like that's not Davis is off and now Ed's going to take his place. That is a definite competition. Jesse Davis got the start on Sunday against the Raiders, but Ingram came in with the second team and looked really good. And I think I told you this a week ago, but my prediction now is I really firmly believe that there's a very good chance September 11th in the opener against the Packers at US Bank Stadium, Ed Ingram starts. I think that he is probably, it's safe to say, ahead of schedule. He's definitely, because I think the scouting reports on him ticketed him for like a 3rd-round pick. He was taken by the Vikings as one of their 2 second-round picks. Wow. I think we're now seeing why the Vikings jumped the line a bit and took him. And we talked about this briefly on Monday's show, but the most important thing here is it looks like there is a possibility. I caution, but it looks good right now. There is a possibility that for the first time in a long time, the Vikings have found a potential long-term solution at right guard. And we discussed that. It's been a long time. It has been a revolving door of, as I like to say, slappies, right? You get this guy in, and then it's that guy, and then it's that guy. None have been particularly, for the most part, memorable or that good. Well, now, if we're talking about, if Ingram is the guy, now we're talking about your tackles, long-term, barring injury or set. Cleveland at left guard certainly appears now firmly in place at that position long-term. And now you potentially have another piece of a puzzle, and make no mistake, it's a puzzle that fits together. Ed Ingram at right guard. I like his chances here.
I think it's, I'm not making fun of you here, but it's just the way that we sort of talk about the right guard position. It's with so much caution and, well, I don't want to get too ahead, and I just want to make sure that this, it's not ironclad yet, but we've set the bar so low. Mm-hmm. And by we, I mean Vikings right guards have set the bar so low over the past 10 or 15 years that I guess that's the way that we have to talk about it. But really what's happening here is Oli Udoh was one of the worst right guards in the entire league last year. And so they went to the kind of the scrap heap of free agency. They went and found Jesse Davis, who he's played some guard and some tackle. He was according to Pro Football Focus, one of the worst tackles in the NFL last year. So they're kind of bringing him in, saying, all right, let's move you off tackle, and maybe you can play some guard. And Chris Reed was, in limited snaps, was a league average guard. And so bring those two guys in, and at the very least, we've got a couple of veterans in here that can maybe get the job done. Draft a guard in the second round in Ed Ingram, and the discussion is sort of, oh boy, let's see if he can beat out these two scrap heap $3 DVD bin guys that they brought in here. Really, like any other franchise that hasn't been scarred watching guard play for 10 years would say, oh, of course Ed Ingram's going to start. Why would you not start the high upside beast of a second round pick that played in the SEC against NFL competition on the other side of the football, right? Like he, on paper, if you weren't watching train wreck after train wreck as a Viking fan, it's obvious that Ed Ingram is the guy. Like, he's going to start. But we're still kind of going day by day, just kind of make sure that it's not a mirage. Is this an actual right guard of substance? I don't know. Let's see what happens in the next preseason game.
And it's right, too, because this is the previous administration are the same guys who called Oli Udo at home at some point in the summer and said, hey, kid, you're an unproven tackle, but prepare to play right guard. Like, think about that. They thought so little of that position that they converted a guy who, by the way, it became crystal clear very quickly, was not prepared and was unfairly, in his defense, asked to play that spot. When you are converting a backup tackle with no experience at guard and just basically saying, you know what, you're going to play guard now, and then you follow through despite his struggles, like that to me is why there is no question, especially right guard PTSD here, because you are asking a fan base to put up with what they know is nonsense. Complete nonsense.
Yeah. I don't want to spoil the Mackey and Judd pecking order for Tuesday here, but I've done a little right guard digging over the past several hours. Judd, can you tell me the last season the Vikings had the same right guard in back-to-back seasons, so the second of the two back-to-back seasons, play the majority of right guard snaps?
Oh, hold on a second.
Yeah, phone a friend. This is not
I was taking a little nap before, and I forgot to shut my alarm off. See, that's what happens, kids. When you get old and frail, you need more naps. Okay, so hold on a second here. So the last time the Vikings had a right guard who actually returned for a second season. It's that simple.
And I'm not saying that like back-to-back years in which they started the same. I didn't do that deeper research. I think it's back-to-back seasons in which they played the majority of the right guard snaps.
Oh boy, help me here.
Just give me the year.
I'm trying to remember if Joe Berger was a left or right guard. I think he might have been a left guard. I'm going to go 2007 and 8. Or 8 and 9.
It's not quite that bad. It's 2013, Brandon Fusco, 2013.
Okay.
And before that, it was Anthony Herrera had a 3-year run, I want to say. Because I think it was Artis Hicks for a minute, and then Anthony Herrera for like 3 seasons. So it's been almost a decade.
But think about it. That's remarkable. That's remarkable for a guy who is supposed to help protect a QB. And Kirk, who is, not the most mobile quarterback on the face of the earth, has been here since 2018, and he has had a revolving door at guard where interior pressure is a problem. Mm-hmm. Like, I want people to comprehend the importance here of saying a solution might have been found.
Yes, and because we have apparently in 2022 zero ability for gray area and nuance, it has to be this or this, even though the majority of life and sports are in the gray area.
Yep.
What happens is any sort of flaw at right guard or center is viewed as, well, what's Kirk supposed to do? What's he supposed to do? He's got a crappy right guard. He's got a crappy center. And to some extent, that's true. And it's on the Vikings for having this asset that they've invested in, historic amounts of guaranteed money for 4 or 5 seasons, or getting into a 6th season, and they've yet to figure this out. But I think Ed Ingram gives you. I think this is a multi-year thing. Maybe I'll go on the record, get out in front and write that down. Say I think he is your solution. He will be the. Can I say this? Write this down. This has to be a home run or a touchdown. I'll just wait. I'll wait.
We'll give you the buffer.
But I think we're finally going to get a multi-year solution here, starting with week 1 this year.
It's RGPTSD. That is what this doctor has, RGPTSD. This is exactly what we've been looking at, and now we're diagnosed with RGPTSD.
And the LG PTSD, I think, has sort of been fixed by Ezra Cleveland, but that's also been lingering. The LG PTSD.
That's like a cavity that's kind of developing, but it's too early to fill. So like, let's just see if maybe it just fills itself. Like maybe just stop eating gummy worms every other night, and you might be okay by next year.
What happens if you just leave cavities?
It rolls your teeth.
Pain, right?
Yeah, pretty painful, and
I think your teeth start to fall out.
And then a tooth extraction, which is not fun.
Okay.
Dentures, baby. That's what happens. Dentures.
So, all right, we'll keep an eye on Ezra Cleveland then. Make sure we don't have to go to the dentist.
I feel pretty good about that one. I don't think it's perfect, but
well, let's move around the offensive line here. If you could give us here, what are your, not what the team is doing right now, but from what you've observed at practice, a trained journalistic eye, and during the first preseason game, who are your starting 5 offensive linemen right now? And you can't make any trades yet. Let's just say you have to go with the guys that are on the team right now. Who's your first team offensive line, and what do the backups then look like?
So I think they got 4 of the 5 right. The tackles for sure. And I like both of those guys. I think are quality players, good players, okay? Which is absolutely key. It feels like Ingram, I think, for the joint practices against San Fran, should move above Davis on the depth chart. So he would be my starting right guard. And look, he might not be perfect, but I think there is definitely a there that's not a journeyman. Oh, we'll plug this guy in 2022, and in 23 you just wait. So I would go with Ingram at right guard. Cleveland, look, I don't think Cleveland's going to knock your socks off at left guard, but I think he's a developing player. And I certainly didn't see enough last year to consider benching him. And I think he's a developing player who can become solid at left guard, and that's extremely important. I guess my hot take, but it's not super hot, it's just an observation, is this. Judging by what I saw from Austin Schlottmann at center with the second team on Sunday, I would be willing to and at least take a look at him challenging Bradbury.
That's what I was trying to get at here too. Yeah.
Okay,
so make that move.
So now don't get me wrong here, Phil. I am not going to just make that move and declare that against the Packers in week 1 I'm playing Schlottmann. Do I think he deserves an opportunity after what we saw him do in pass protection? Yes, I do. I absolutely do. Garrett Bradbury at every turn, I think, continues to underwhelm at one of the most important facets for his job. And if I want Kirk Cousins and this offense to be as successful as possible, I don't think just saying that we're going to settle on Bradbury is wise. So yes, I would make this starting in the joint practices on Wednesday. I would make this a competition at least.
Yeah, they haven't done that yet.
Nope.
They haven't. And maybe they finally sneak someone else in there, either Schlottmann or Chris Reed against the 49ers, but they've yet to actually open it up. He's used the word competition, Kevin O'Connell. We have all been pining for competition, or just go sign J.C. Treader or something, but they have not taken the sort of nuclear step of officially making it a competition in practice. And this would seem to be the week to try it, right?
Yeah,
you're facing actual competition against the Niners in practice. You can probably, I wouldn't say you can sneak it under the radar because everyone who's watching is going to take note, but this would be the week to do it.
What's the downside?
Feelings.
Beyond.
You already declined his 5th-year option anyway.
Exactly.
Like, he knows how you feel about him. So.
Yes, and beyond us talking and writing extensively about it, right? But I mean, that's part of this league. Like, you can't decline to stage actual competitions because of feelings or because it might create some problems. This is the absolute perfect week to say this offense has, I think, a lot of good things going for it right now. Center's not one. And there's not like 5 problems here. That is like the biggest problem spot. And if you are going to bring in Davis and then say, you know what? Our second round pick at right guard is playing well. Let's stage a competition here. What would stop you from saying the exact same thing with a first round pick at center from 2019, who so far, again, in what I consider to be one of, if not the most important part of his job, which is pass protection, has not done the job.
Yeah. Yep, and let's not pretend that Austin Schlottmann is an ironclad solution either.
No, exactly.
That's the problem. There's really all the backup options are backups for a reason or have very little to no experience snapping the football, and they're trying it for the first time in camp, basically like Chris Reed. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, this would be the week to make something happen. This is also the week to start changing your life and losing. Maybe you can lose some pounds before the football season starts so that you're in good shape before you watch your favorite team against the Packers.
And that of course, would be thanks to my friends who have helped me drop 40 pounds from Livia Weight Control Centers. Notice I don't say diet, weight control, because I've not only gotten help in taking that weight off, but also in maintaining the weight loss. Weight control. My wife, Dawn, she joined, down 14 plus pounds now. So together, teamwork, Zolgad household, down 50 plus pounds. And right now, with the anniversary sale, you can join the program for 50% off. That's right, 50% off. How? 855-GO-LIVEA or LIVEA Livia.com is your first step towards getting all of those clothes that don't fit now to fit. And as I said, most importantly, you also can keep that weight off thanks to my friends, LIVEA Livia.com.
And since we're changing our lives for the better here, okay, guys, you don't have to be embarrassed. ED happens, okay? It's fairly common. And Valley Park Medical Clinic is dedicated to providing breakthrough ED remedies to men in the greater Minneapolis area. Their approach is medical. You'll meet with a medical provider who will review your medical history, examine you, supervise your treatments, which are surgery-free, drug-free, non-invasive. This is a very highly trained team that can help you get this area of your life under control to give you more confidence, make you feel good. ValleyParkMedicalClinic.com. That's ValleyParkMedicalClinic.com. Also a shout out to our friends at Federated Mutual Insurance Company before we talk wide receiver depth football. Federated's been around like an offensive line for your business, providing risk management tools and resources and protection for over 100 years. They're based in Owatonna, Minnesota. They are one of us, so to speak. And you can find a full list of industries Federated protects to see if it meshes with your business at federatedinsurance.com, where it's our business to protect yours. So Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen sat out the game. What did KJ Osborne do in that game? Did he not play, or was he out there for 5 minutes? And
he did play, I think, but I don't know if he caught a pass or not.
So he was kind of chilling, but not quite in the sweatsuit like Thielen and Jefferson, but a lot of other interesting receivers running around. So give us your observations on the second and third wave of receivers on this team. And it looks like they're, just based on history, they're probably going to keep 5 or 6 depending on how some of the other positions work out in special teams.
Competition galore. I have here, these are my notes, and this is a position by position roster here. So if you can see this.
Oh, this is great for the YouTube
And what you
audience.
have right there, ladies and gentlemen, highlighted is the receiver breakdown, okay? All right, so right now,
I was hoping to see like an inappropriate drawing on there somewhere.
No, why would I do that? I can barely draw it, dude. You couldn't even tell. You couldn't even tell. Also, by today at 3 p.m. our time, this roster, first cuts are coming today, will go from 90 to 85. All right?
Okay.
So 5 cuts. What we have right now, 12 receivers, 12 guys. That's a lot. More importantly, I have 8 receivers highlighted who I think are vying for, as Phil said, 5 or 6 jobs. Okay?
Yeah.
So this is going to be pretty good competition. All right. Jefferson, in. Thielen, in. Osborne, in. I think Amir Smith-Marset, in. I think he's the 4. And right now, BC Johnson, I think, is the 5. And so this is where it gets intriguing. One is I would not assure BC Johnson of a job assuredly right now. I just think he's the 5 right now. Let me get to a guy that was actually open for a potential touchdown when Mond was playing on Sunday. Second year player out of Syracuse. He wears number 9. Tristan Jackson. Tristan Jackson, I will say this. So the whole debate about Mond was there were times on Sunday he looked good, but there's a reason why these teams practice a lot, right? Because it's your overall practice / games that win you a roster spot. And I will say that Jackson has, as we like to say in football, flashed. He is definitely applying some pressure to make this team. He's my first guy who I think is going to press for a potential roster spot.
Super interesting. So he's not a name we really talked about going into training camp. I did see our guy from the Before We Die Purple Daily spinoff podcast, Thor Nystrom, was tweeting about him last night. Mm-hmm. And he's just, I mean, there's other names on the Vikings roster that I think we've seen before, or they were, more highly touted coming out of college. But his last year at Syracuse, 2019, so he transferred from Michigan State to Syracuse after the 2017 season.
He doesn't transfer now. It's
I know.
Incredible.
It's hilarious.
Everyone ends up somewhere else.
So he didn't really get any playing time at Michigan State or even in his first year at Syracuse. I'm not sure if that was an injury his first year at Syracuse. However, his last year at Syracuse, in 12 games, 66 catches for over 1,000 yards, 16 yards a catch, 11 touchdowns.
Yep.
He was one of the best receivers in the ACC in 2019. So, yeah, I mean, I guess I'll admit, he wasn't on my radar as much because there's so many guys to talk about in this position group. But do you think there's a chance Tristan Jackson makes the roster? Is that what you're saying?
I think there's an outside chance. Yes, and I think he would probably push BC. I think BC. So BC is a guy Kirk likes. And I think BC is very good at the fundamentals of what he does. I don't think he's dynamic, though. And I think with a coaching staff like this, which is going to take, obviously from an offensive standpoint, a lot more to information. I think that this coaching staff is much more likely to make a decision that we like this guy, but this guy has a ton of potential. And I think Jackson's athletic ability and what we saw a bit on Sunday and what I've seen in practice has been impressive enough where I think this guy with Zimmer gets cut for sure. I think with O'Connell and staff, I think he's giving himself a chance.
Yep. And I should add too, just these former Rams, and for the audience, he was undrafted out of college, Jackson was, but he was signed as an undrafted free agent before the 2020 season, the pandemic season, by the Rams. And so he has experience, at least in practice and whatnot, with this offense.
Yes.
Anyone that has Rams experience in the last 2 or 3 years is a dark horse to make the team. And Sean Mannion falls into that category. However much people are driven crazy by watching him in these games, that dude spent 2 years helping Jared Goff and just working in that system, I think even before Kevin O'Connell got there. But anyone with recent former Rams ties is someone to keep an eye on, and Tristan Jackson falls into that category.
All right, so he's my first guy. My second guy that again, I think this guy probably gets cut. I think they try and sneak him through to the practice squad, but he's fast, and I think he has the potential to intrigue. 6th round pick out of Michigan State, Jalen Naylor. He is a potential return guy. Now, it's my opinion that when the regular season starts, I think Wongwu is going to return kickoffs again. And I'm almost positive that on opening day, week 1, Amir Smith-Marset is going to return punts. Naylor has a skill set that is extremely intriguing. I think that there might be some hope in the cut down from 80 to 53 when the league is absolutely flooded with players, that the Vikings can sneak him through and sign him to their practice squad. But he at least is a guy who I think is going to get consideration. Right now, if it came down to a battle of roster spots, I think Jackson has a better chance. But I would not dismiss the coaching staff being very concerned that a guy like Nick Naylor, if he is indeed cut, would get claimed because of his athletic ability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a reason why he stood out to them in the draft. And again, it's going to come down to, do they feel comfortable with him as maybe a guy that can step in and be a backup as a special teams returner, and then maybe if there's an injury, can he step up to the fourth receiver spot or something? I mean, or can he do other things on special teams? You know, those are some of the things that they're probably discussing right now.
Yes. My third guy is a guy that I thought really showed on Sunday outstanding chemistry with Mond. I don't think he makes the team, but I think he might get a chance elsewhere. Myron Mitchell. I think he got a couple passes Sunday. He's been around. I think he might have been a practice squad guy last year. I don't think he has a chance to make this roster, but there's ability there. And he's made some plays in practice too. So like there's definitely something there. But I think once we get down to a guy like that, I don't think that there's room. But he at least intrigues me with his performance in the preseason game and probably more importantly in the actual training camp practices.
Mm-hmm. Pardon me, did you already mention Albert Wilson in this exercise?
He has, in my opinion, zero chance to make this team.
Because he caught 2 touchdown passes.
Because he got two touchdowns. I don't think he's got a chance.
So, okay, can you go deeper on that? Because I think a lot of fans who aren't watching practice every day but watch the first preseason game are going to say,
absolutely,
the guy caught 2 touchdowns.
Absolutely right. 8th-year veteran guy. I don't think that there's upside there. So, yes, he caught touchdowns. And look, it feels like in every training camp and in every, week 1 of exhibition games, right? That there's a guy like this who gets in late and makes a few plays. But the reality is he was not making those plays in training camp practices. And this is important. So I'll give you a downside play from a training camp practice, and this is all sample size, so it's small. So like I'm not trying to declare that this is why he won't make the team. I think the strike against him is going to be that he has experience and that he is who he is, and that there's guys I'm talking about who the coaching staff probably thinks they can develop. But there was a 2-minute drill that they were running in training camp practice last week, and I believe it was Mond threw what should have been a touchdown pass into the back of the end zone, and Wilson dropped it. That's a strike. That's a strike too. We have to be aware of not to give too much credence just 2 games. And hey, look, they're fun. They do tell things. I'm not trying to dismiss them completely. But I think if you sit down at TCO, Phil, and you start to go through this and you're like, all right, we got some good players here and we want to get to 5, 6 max receivers that we keep. I think you keep guys on the 53 that you're intrigued with, because the top of your depth chart is good. Like you've got really good.
I agree with that.
Star players. So if it is a first-year guy, a second-year guy, or an 8th-year guy, I think it might not be fair. The 8th-year guy is more out by default of, is he really going to change to become a player when in 2 years, when this thing starts to change. If you've kept a guy who you like now, who might not play a ton, he could replace Thielen, Osborne potentially. I think that's how decisions are made when you get farther down that depth chart.
Yeah, it's the opportunity cost of, okay, Albert Wilson. Maybe Albert Wilson right now is a better, more reliable receiver than Jalen Naylor, Tristan Jackson, and Myron Mitchell, whatever. But he's not going to start for you. He's not going to be one of your 3 top receivers unless there's an injury. So do you want to keep him on the roster, and then the opportunity cost would be, and then somebody else picks up Jalen Naylor or Tristan Jackson, and then they emerge as a good, solid number 3. So I'm with you on that. Man, pretty much everyone we've talked about. In fact, I think this is accurate. I'm just looking at the Vikings roster. There's all these receivers you just mentioned, 12 or whatever the roster has. Mm-hmm. I think only 2 of them are over the age of 25. Yeah, I mean, even like Thomas Hennigan, who's my dark horse, who's probably not going to make the team. He's an older player out of Appalachian State, 24 years old. Is it Dan Chisna? He's 25.
It's Chisena, I guess.
Chisena.
I had no idea.
One of those names you see in print for
I've been
3
years,
but you've never heard it pronounced right.
Yes.
BC Johnson, despite it seems like he's been around forever, he's only 25.
Yep.
Maybe 26 years old. So it's a young crop, and there's okay. So if we're keeping 6 as a show here, J.J. Adam and K.J. Osborne for sure. Emir Smith-Marset for sure.
Yep.
And that leaves 2 spots open. I'll trust you at this point. I mean, B.C. Johnson seems like he's getting... It seems like he's recovered from the injury and is getting enough run in practice. So let's pencil him in as one of the last 2 spots. And then it's probably down to either Jalen Naylor or Tristan Jackson. Is that fair to say?
That's fair. And I think the question then, I think the question for final cuts to 53 becomes this: which one is more likely to be claimed? Because you could play with this at the cut down and gamble that if you waive Jackson, he sneaks through, can come back to your practice squad. Yeah. So I think the question is not who's going to contribute if you keep 6 at the 6th spot. It's who can you find a way to not have him claimed. Yeah. So for the time being, you preserve a player that you really like and drafted potentially in Naylor's case.
Yeah, there's a lot of chess here. I mean, at one point, I am not comparing these guys on the bubble to Adam Thielen, but this was a discussion for a couple of camps with Adam Thielen, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, didn't expect him to look that good in camp. Okay, but he's not going to start for us. What do you do? Does another team like what they've seen and his route running and stuff? It's a chess match.
And the last part is special teams too. Jacina has survived because of one thing: special teams. Special teams. Can you contribute there? If you are the 6th receiver and you absolutely can't, the previous coaching staff, I think, cut you. This coaching staff, I'm not as sure about.
Yeah. Love it. Love the skill position player depth on this team. We talked a lot about the running backs on yesterday's episode. Just kind of bonkers. The tight ends are a little thin, but if Irv Smith Jr. comes back, then at least they've got him. So, all right, before we get to what are people saying about the Vikings, what are people saying about Surly? A lot of people sending in their pictures of the Before I Die can at U.S. Bank Stadium.
Yes. They are saying one thing and one thing very clear. Summer of Surly is here, and it's here to stay. And I say absolutely right. And I mean, that could take you down the path of the Furious, the Supreme, Logic Bomb. And as Phil just said, you're going to find when you go to U.S. Bank Stadium, since we're all on the exact same page, this year for Vikings games, the Before I Die beer and can is going to be there. And so you can pledge your allegiance to the Purple Daily motto every time you attend a Vikings game, which is Before I Die. I want to watch the Vikings win a Super Bowl, and you can do it with a can of delicious Surly beer in your hand.
Hey, if you guys are in the market to sell a home, you should work with our friends at Equity Partners. So actually, our guy Ryan, who's one of the co-owners of Equity Partners, made a Write That Down appearance a few weeks back. So he's just been a huge supporter and fan of the show, and you can, in turn, if you're looking to sell your house, support his company, and they're going to go over the top for you because they're all about making the house selling process 100% hassle-free. The first thing is maximizing the value on your home. So from simple fixes to total remodels, Equity Partners has you covered. And then from there, when you partner with them, you can put offers in on your next home, non-contingent on the sale of your current home, which is always kind of a pain in the arse to time up. Learn more at equitypartnersmn.com, equitypartnersmn.com, or call 612-999-2244. What are people saying about the Minnesota Vikings, gentlemen? There is an article. Declan spotted this one a couple days ago in The Athletic, and it is called the Quarterback Betrayal Index.
Football.
This is football. We don't really have our full studio set up here right now because I'm on the road in Bears country doing some scouting of Justin Fields for Purple Daily or at company meetings, whatever. So what's one of the main questions that people have been either asking about or debating for years with Kirk Cousins? It's, well, what if you were to give him this, this, and this, right? Well, what about the defense?
Yep.
And that's kind of the point of this article, so I'm not going to read the whole preamble, but what they tried to do is go through all of the quarterbacks in recent NFL history. And so there's 54 quarterbacks on this list. And they're trying to line up how good are those quarterbacks according to expected points added, which is an analytic or statistic that front offices lean on. And then how good or bad were their defenses during their careers. So, for instance, the largest offense to defense differential on this list is Drew Brees. So he is the number 2 quarterback on this list according to EPA over the past, I don't even know how far back they go. I think it's like the last 15 years.
Yeah, something like that.
Last 10-ish years, somewhere in there. So if you remember, Brees had those 3 or 4 years where he was bonkers offensively, just lighting up the air, and they were scoring 30 points a game, whatever, but their defense was historically bad, and they had a string of 7 and 9 seasons with this Hall of Fame quarterback and the worst defense in the league. Far worse than anything we've seen in Minnesota with Kirk Cousins. On the bottom end of this, for instance, of the 54 quarterbacks, so who had it the other way? So Sam Darnold is last on the list of quarterbacks, but he has had the 8th best collection of defenses because the Jets have had some, when he played for the Jets, they actually had some pretty good defenses.
Right.
You know? So he couldn't take advantage. He was also young, and the Jets are a train wreck. But like Mitch Trubisky is on this list. He has the second widest gap. He's the 40th ranked quarterback, but has had the 3rd best collection of defenses.
Yes.
So where does Kirk Cousins fall on this? Talk to a lot of Vikings fans or Cousins crusaders, and you'd think, oh, he's probably number 2 behind Drew Brees, right? The guy's the unluckiest quarterback in the history of football. Well, he's 17th on the list. So he generally skews more toward, having a wider gap between how good he is and how bad his defenses are. So he is ranked, among these 54 quarterbacks, he is ranked 22nd. And again, that includes like Drew Brees, who's not in the league anymore, Tony Romo, who's not in the league anymore but was very good before he retired, Andrew Luck, who's not in the league anymore. So you take some of these guys out, and he's not 22nd among the current crop of quarterbacks. It's going back 10 or 15 years. So 22nd, and then he's had the 33rd ranked out of 54 group of defenses. And this is largely because of the 2018-19 defenses the Vikings had were top 5, top 10 defenses in the league.
Yeah.
And even when they've had bad defenses, quote unquote, they've been more like the 20th ranked defense than the 32nd ranked defense like Drew Brees has had to deal with. So I guess my question to you guys is, how does this land with you, seeing now that like someone actually tackled this question and is saying that, okay, it's, he's definitely been a little unlucky, but it's not as bad as some of the Cousins crusaders would have you believe in his career?
I think it's extremely fair. And look, I mean, that's about what if you had told me, just blind test, where did I think Kirk might rank with a list like this? Seems absolutely accurate. And, the one thing is, okay, Kirk and Mike didn't get along, and the last 2 years were atrocious. But you know what? I mean, for as much as it backfired or didn't work, I guess, when Rick Spielman signed Kirk, and this is why I don't ever rip that day, he had the right motivation. He was basically saying, I'm going to, against your will financially, Mike, but I'm going to give you a quarterback. You have a defense that's awesome, because they were. You have a defense that's great. If we plug in a ready-made professional, good statistically for sure, quarterback, we're going to be really good. And so to me, until it's changed, the snapshot of Kirk's career is 2018. And also, one thing to correct about that, there's a misconception. DeFilippo's offensive scheme, okay? The misconception is, well, Kirk had no chance. DeFilippo was an idiot. He got fired by Mike. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, the problem with that is very, very simple. John DeFilippo took the job here thinking he was getting a star quarterback, and therefore orchestrated a defense around a star quarterback.
Offense.
Offense. The point is, it didn't work. And so while I certainly would not dump on Kirk completely and say, oh, he's garbage, I think where they have him ranked is incredibly accurate, incredibly fair. And you know what? Kirk has had some bad luck. Kirk has also caused some of his own problems.
Here is an interesting stat, too, because they have write-ups for all these guys. So He is 7-18-2 all time in the most extreme betrayal games, defined here as when the combined defense and special teams expected points added is worse than -10 for a game. It's getting in the weeds statistically here, but like in the games which
betrayal games.
So I love the way they put
Sounds
this.
like a soap opera. You
Yeah,
betrayed me.
So you think 7-18-2 when the defense is really bad, which is actually the 11th best win rate in those games among the 54 quarterbacks. You're not going to have a winning record in games in which your defense is getting slugged. It's a tick behind Russell Wilson's 7-16 mark in those extreme betrayal games. I think sometimes, though, the knock on Kirk is it's not as much like, why can't you score 35 points and win a shootout? It's, why did you not beat the Browns when they only scored 14 points in a home game, right? Or why did you not beat the Cowboys at home on Sunday night when Cooper Rush could only put up 17 or 20 points? It's some of those games that make you scratch your head like, God, dude, come on, man. Just need 20 points here to beat the Browns at home. Should be able to make that happen. But
And I guess you look at like the other quarterbacks on top of that list, like Drew Brees, to our point from the top of this conversation, like, yeah, from 2012 to 2014, that defense was terrible. And they also got penalized because of Bounty Gate and they lost draft picks and they were bad. Then they kind of bolstered it up by the end of Drew Brees' run. That Saints defense was actually a lot better. Tony Romo, same thing. Tony Romo put up a lot of great offensive statistics, and he is number 3 on this list because he had some horrible defenses behind him. Kirk being 18th or 17th is about right, dude. He had really good defense his first 2 years here. The last 2 years, it's been obviously below average, but you have to always kind of balance it out. I don't look at him as an unlucky quarterback. Like Andrew Luck, there was the great series from The Athletic on the docu-series. Literally, if you're a football nerd and you love podcasts, I highly recommend the Andrew Luck thing because it goes into whole detail of his rise, then obviously his demise and his basically walking away from football. Those Colts teams just put up horrible surrounding infrastructure around Andrew Luck, and it forced him to retire before he was 30. Before
Ryan Grigson,
he was 30.
baby. Ryan Grigson.
And he was the only
Right
one,
down the
by the
street
way.
now.
Literally, everyone on the Colts staff, from Pagano to Urs, everyone that's involved in the Colts has spoke on that podcast, except for Ryan Grigson. He was the only one who declined to say
him all the
anything.
time.
that is interesting.
I'll ask him about it.
You should. I'm sure he'll be
Griggy,
happy
baby,
to talk
what's up
about
with that?
Yeah.
The unluckiest quarterbacks on the quarterback betrayal ranking. I'll just go through this. So Drew Brees is number 1. And again, this is the gap between how good the quarterback or the offense are and how bad the defense is over this chunk of time. Justin Herbert is number 2. Tony Romo and Matt Ryan are tied for 3. Aaron Rodgers is 5th. And I know a lot of Vikings fans are like, what? No.
Yeah, he's
well,
bad.
dude, if you look at those Mike McCarthy teams, so in 2010, I think that was the year they won the Super Bowl, the Packers had the second best defense and the second best scoring defense in the league. The rest of Mike McCarthy's tenure there, they were 19th, 11th, 24th, 13th, 12th. It's not terrible, but 21st, 26th, 22nd. And then his first year in Dallas, the Cowboys are feeling the same thing. They were 28th. So they had some bad defenses for like 10 years with Aaron Rodgers. And then Patrick Mahomes is 6th because the Chiefs have had a couple really bad defenses in the last couple years. But he's the best quarterback on this list, but his defenses are 37th collectively. Deshaun Watson, Andrew Luck, Matthew Stafford, Phillip Rivers, Ryan Fitzpatrick. A little bit unlucky.
Magic, yeah.
Just give that guy a good defense. Let's see what happens. So, anyhow, and on the other end, just for fun, just to count some of the quarterbacks who've been god-awful and maybe had some decent defenses and couldn't take advantage. Sam Darnold, Mitch Trubisky, Brock Osweiler, Brian Hoyer, Joe Flacco, Blake Bortles, Case Keenum, Nick Foles, Joe Burrow, but that's largely because of his rookie season being kind of not a disaster, but and then Geno Smith and Sam Bradford. So there you go. See, it hasn't been a terrible life in the NFL for Kirk. Okay, let's stop going too far with that narrative. So you're not going to get a perfect defense across the board here. But the defense needs to be better. It needs to be better.
We're going to find out now.
Yes.
Pieces
All right,
are in place, I'm told.
Ooh.
Pieces
Yes,
in
they
place.
are. Pieces are in place. All right, boys, that's a wrap on this episode of Purple Daily, presented by Surly and TCL. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die. See ya.